Hello, my name is Katherine Jennings, and I'm a PhD student at Michigan State University in the Writing, Rhetoric, and American Culture Department, and a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And I will be interviewing Dr. Malea Powell, the chair of the Writing, Rhetoric, and American Culture Department. And welcome, Malea.
Hi, Kat.
So just to begin with, what would you consider to be an Indigenous pedagogy?
I think that for me, Indigenous pedagogy is not just an Indigenous person in the classroom teaching. It's bringing in the approaches that we have to teaching and learning from our home communities and taking that and bringing it into the classroom. So, for example, when you're teaching someone to do beadwork, a teacher will frequently give you some instructions, give you the materials, and then sit down alongside you to not just to help you not make mistakes, but to help you arrange and orient your body, your thinking, all the materials, so that you can have the experience of it that's going to be the most optimal for you, so you can really learn what you're doing. My beadwork teacher frequently let me mess up and tie things in knots, right? Because she wanted me to learn how to untangle knots and how to figure out how to help someone else as well. And so I think that bringing that into the classroom means you give students readings, you give them experiences, you provide assignments, but and you go alongside them, not to make sure they don't make mistakes, but to make sure that the experience they have, both with their makings and successes and their mistakes, is the most optimal that they could possibly have. I think that for me, Indigenous pedagogy always means paying attention to all of the stories and to making sure that folks get support as they move through all of their learning experiences.
So why is this pedagogy important today, and how does it play into the larger concept of both education and indigeneity?
I think that these practices are important to teach in universities today, because I think it's long past time that Indigenous ways of being get entered into the university in a formal way. So to teach any kind of course at all with an Indigenous approach to pedagogy really means that we're allowing Native people into the institution in their complete and fullness of knowing. And so to teach from an Indigenous perspective with an Indigenous pedagogy means that students who may not be Indigenous get exposed to Indigenous ways of making, Indigenous ways of knowing, Indigenous ways of being, but also that the university learns how Indigenous knowledge can transform what happens inside the institution, right? So I think that it also allows for more ways of knowing in the classroom. So it's not just I'm going to be the Indigenous teacher and you're going to learn the Indigenous way. For me, those teaching practices really are accepting and open to different ways of knowing as well. So everybody brings their story, everybody brings their knowledge to the table, and Indigenous pedagogy allows you to sort of like move around and make sure everyone gets valued and heard, but also honors the land that the institutions are built on.
So how can we use technology to promote these sorts of practices and methodologies in the classroom?
I actually think that technology is really essential for the survival of Indigenous communities today. And what we see, if you're on social media, if you're out on the internet looking around, you see a much more vibrant sharing of Indigenous knowledge from 500, 600, 1,000 different viewpoints, because everyone has a voice out there. You can join Facebook groups and Twitter groups and Instagram groups and other kinds of online groups and actually connect with Indigenous people all over the world. So for me, technology is one of the ways that we're building a bridge between Indigenous people and across communities that might never even know of each other or talk to each other. It's been really exciting to watch the kind of work that can get done around an event that happens like the occupation at Standing Rock, where Indigenous people all over the world could contribute and participate and support the folks who are there on the ground. And it's those kinds of efforts, I think, that technology really helps us with. And so when you move from that kind of social space into a classroom, I think it also gives students a much broader way of understanding the variety and diversity and volume of Indigenous expression that's out there in the globe, right? They can think beyond just here in this continent or here in this place to what are the kinds of things that happen here in Michigan among Indigenous peoples that also happen all over the globe with Indigenous peoples that they may not even have known existed before. And so I think that we build a huge community, a global community of Native people, but also that we build the ability to support each other and to spread and share each other's knowledge more widely and to share that knowledge with our students.
So how do we take all of this huge network of interconnectedness and promotion of community practices and synthesize it into something that is useful and manageable in a classroom?
That's such a hard question. I think that the way that I've been able to do it is to approach it course by course with what I want to come out of the course, the experience I want students to have, the learning goals I have in hand, and then think about how to bring that vast array of Indigenous knowledge to bear in that particular moment. So I've taught upper division, graduate level even courses on Indigenous rhetorics and rooted it here in the land locally so that we were reading and experiencing things that happened here in Michigan, writers from Michigan, scholars, historians, treaty signers from Michigan, makers from Michigan, but then in the sort of contextual kind of readings that we did to bring in a more global perspective so that students could start to see how the local and the global interact with one another around Indigenous knowledge making. I think that for a class like that, that's probably my best strategy. For different kinds of courses, I would say, again, find a way to make that local global connection, even when you're asking students to go out into the internet, online, out there in the big connected world, to always bring it back to a local connection or a local relevance, because that helps them make that knowledge relevant to themselves as well.
Thank you so much, Malea, for coming with us today and sharing your stories and your knowledge and your wisdom about something that can be really difficult to articulate, but is really important when we think about what this can mean for these communities and for the global Indigenous community and everything that we're trying to do here today. Thank you so much.